Mercedes breaking its silence on Lewis Hamilton's struggles at Ferrari is significant, not because of rivalry, but because of what it reveals about the depth of the relationship that still exists between driver and former team. The move to Ferrari in 2025 was supposed to represent a fresh chapter. Yet instead, it became the most difficult season of his career in purely competitive terms. What Mercedes has now done is acknowledge that reality openly and, in doing so, provide context that has often been missing from the public narrative surrounding Hamilton's first year in red. From a sporting perspective, the numbers tell a clear story. Hamilton finished the season without a single Grand Prix podium for the first time in his Formula One career, ending 86 points behind Charles Leclerc. While there were isolated moments of promise, such as the sprint win in China, they were overshadowed by recurring qualifying struggles and an inability to consistently extract performance from the SF25. Mercedes' comments do not attempt to deny this. Instead, they recognize that the transition has been harder than expected and that the frustration Hamilton has shown is a reflection of how deeply invested he remains in performance. What stands out most in Mercedes' statement is its tone. There is no defensiveness, no attempt to distance themselves from a driver who no longer races for them. On the contrary, Mercedes has spoken openly about supporting Hamilton on a human level, acknowledging the emotional toll that a difficult season can take on a driver whose standards have always been exceptionally high. This kind of language is rare in Formula One, where former relationships are often quietly severed once contracts end. Bradley Lord's remarks underline this point. By admitting that the team feels sympathy for Hamilton and continues to encourage him, Mercedes is effectively saying that his struggles are not seen as a decline in ability, but as a situational challenge. This distinction matters. It reframes Hamilton's Ferrari season, not as evidence that he is no longer competitive, but as proof of how disruptive a major environmental change can be, even for a seven-time world champion. The continued contact between Hamilton and Toto Wolff adds further weight to this interpretation. Regular travel conversations, informal discussions with engineers, and ongoing personal support suggest that Hamilton still values the perspective of a team that knows him better than any other organization in the paddock. For Mercedes, maintaining this relationship is not about regret or nostalgia, but about respect. Wolff has always emphasized long-term human relationships, and this situation reflects that philosophy in practice. From Mercedes' point of view, there is also a clear sporting logic behind their stance. By stating openly that they still believe Hamilton can be a benchmark in Formula One, they are implicitly rejecting the idea that his Ferrari struggles define his future. This is not casual praise. Mercedes spent more than a decade building systems around Hamilton's strengths, and they understand precisely what he needs to perform at the highest level. Their confidence carries weight because it is informed by years of data, not optimism. The timing of this statement is also important. Formula One is approaching a major regulatory reset in 2026, with new chassis concepts, radically different power units, and a shift away from the ground effect cars that have defined the current era. Hamilton has been openly critical of these cars, admitting that he has not enjoyed driving them and will not miss them. Mercedes' support should be read in that context. They know that regulation changes can completely alter competitive dynamics, just as they did in 2014. For Lewis Hamilton, the ground effect era has coincided with the most challenging and frustrating phase of his Formula One career, and Mercedes understands that context better than any other team in the paddock. His difficulties did not suddenly appear after moving to Ferrari. They began during the later years of his Mercedes tenure, when the regulatory direction shifted and the cars demanded driving characteristics that no longer aligned naturally with his strengths. Sade's comments implicitly acknowledge that reality. They are not evaluating Hamilton through the lens of isolated results, but through a long-term understanding of how regulation cycles, car concepts, and driver compatibility interact. In doing so, they underline a crucial point, often overlooked in public debate. Performance in modern Formula One is inseparable from the technical concept of the car. Mercedes' assessment suggests that Hamilton's current form cannot be judged without recognizing how deeply the ground effect philosophy altered the balance between driver input and aerodynamic dependency. For Ferrari, this external validation carries weight. Mercedes' support reframes Hamilton's frustrations as a byproduct of ambition rather than disengagement. This visible dissatisfaction throughout the season can be understood as the reaction of a driver who still measures himself against the highest standards, not one who has lost motivation. That mindset is challenging for any team to manage, but it is also the foundation of sustained success. Mercedes' endorsement reinforces the idea that Hamilton's intensity remains intact, even if results have not followed. Looking ahead, Mercedes' belief in Hamilton intersects directly with the opportunity presented by the 2026 regulations. History shows that major rule changes often reward drivers with experience, adaptability, and deep technical understanding. Hamilton has repeatedly demonstrated those qualities across multiple eras of Formula One. Mercedes' comments subtly caution against drawing conclusions based solely on the final year of a regulatory cycle, particularly one that has been uniquely difficult for certain driving styles. In effect, they are saying that the reset matters, and that Hamilton's competitive relevance should be evaluated in that context. The broader implication is that Hamilton's story at Ferrari is far from complete. Mercedes' willingness to publicly express support suggests that those who know his capabilities best view this period as transitional rather than terminal. In a sport where narratives can quickly harden into perceived truths,